As I mentioned in the last segment, there was a pantheon, a collection of deities in the Vedas, and it's somewhat different than the one I'm about to present to you. I'm going to present to you a pantheon which you start to see at least by the early Common Era, but there's not a lot of evidence that these deities were focused on very much before the Common Era. Two of the three here, Vishnu in the center and Shiva on the right, do appear in the Vedas, but aren't a main focus of it. They are the two most popular deities in modern Hinduism. Here's a traditional grouping of three deities, sometimes called the Hindu trinity or the Trimurti. Let's take a closer look. On the left then we have Brahma, the creator, in the middle Vishnu, the preserver, and on the right Shiva, the destroyer. Brahma, not to be confused with Brahman, which is an important concept from Hindu philosophy, is the oldest of these deities in the Hindu tradition, and strangely enough is the least worshipped of the three, and that's been so for a long time. There aren't really temples devoted to Brahma in India. He's pretty much honored just as a member of this Trimurti, just in this collection of three. So he has very few devotees now. He's usually pictured with four faces that look in the four different directions, and his consort or wife is Sarasvati, who is kind of a goddess of learning. In the middle here we have Vishnu, the preserver. Vishnu is a very benevolent character, kind of a god of love. His consort is named Lakshmi, also called Shri, who's a goddess of wealth, luck, fertility, well-being, political power, and royalty, and so on. Lakshmi is a very popular goddess in India presently. Vishnu is usually believed to have had many avatars, that is, many descents. The idea is that whenever the earth is in jeopardy, whenever evil sort of gets the upper hand, Vishnu becomes incarnate and comes down from his heavenly realm to save the world. Here's a recent devotional poster of Vishnu that shows the traditional collection of 10 avatars or 10 incarnations. We'll just note a couple of the more notable ones here. This one is Krishna. He's recognizable here as kind of a cute little cow-herding boy playing his flute, which is from the Puranas. The second person here, you would probably correctly guess, is the Buddha, Gautama. Many Hindus consider the Buddha to have been an avatar of Vishnu. On the right then is Shiva, the destroyer. Most scholars would say that Vishnu is the second most popular deity, and that Shiva is currently the most popular deity in Hinduism. Shiva goes by many names, including Mahadeva, which means great god, and he is thought of as good, but is a more threatening character, a more dangerous character than Vishnu or Krishna and many others. He has a two-sided character. He's benign yet terrible. He's ascetic, so someone who deprives themselves of pleasure, but he's also very sexual in some of the myths. He can be associated with death, destruction, disease, reproduction, and dance, among other things. He's dressed like an ascetic, so he only wears this garment on his lower half, and he has his hair done up in a traditional bun like some ascetic Hindu holy men would do. In both of these pictures, you can see the Ganges River shooting out of his top knot in his hair. He's supposed to be the origin of the Ganges River. His wife is Parvati, the goddess, and she is not usually pictured and worshipped on her own. She's more worshipped for her devotion to Shiva and is most often pictured in association with him. They're often pictured with their two children. One of them is on the left here, Murugan, also called Kartikeya, sort of god of war, more popular in some parts of India than others, although that's true of all these deities. And then Ganesh, or Ganesha, the remover of obstacles in the middle here. He's kind of their son, and you might wonder how he got his elephant head. There are different versions of this story, but the basic version that I've heard is that one day Parvati created a son just for herself. Using her goddess powers, she creates Ganesh, the sun, and then she decides to go in her house and take a bath. She assigns Ganesh with guarding the house and not letting anybody in while she's taking her bath. Well, then Shiva comes home. Shiva tries to go in his own house, and there's this punk kid that he's never seen before that won't let him in. So Shiva loses his temper and cuts off the kid's head, and he dies. Somehow the head is lost. Then the goddess comes out, Parvati comes out, having done with her bath, and sees her newly created child, dead and headless. And she loses her temper, and she's so mad that she's going to destroy the cosmos. So in order to pacify her, Shiva has some of his sort of assistants go out and find the head of the first creature they come upon, which turns out to be an elephant. And Shiva brings Ganesha back to life using the head of the elephant. In any case, Ganesha is a very popular deity in modern Hinduism. He's supposed to be a remover of obstacles, so he's someone you're supposed to appeal to when you're starting some new venture, like going off to college or starting a business or something like that. Shiva is worshipped with a standard kind of idol, which looks like this, and the pillar part is called a lingam, which means a penis, and the lower part is called a yoni, which means a vagina. And there are tales in the Puranas where Shiva's penis turns into this giant pillar of fire and things like that. In any case, these are not treated as erotic objects, and they're not thought of as erotic objects in Hinduism. Hindus look at this object and they just say, well, that's the idol of Shiva. That's what you use when you worship Shiva. So they pour things on it, put flowers on it, bow in front of it, and so on. We'll talk more about Hindu puja, Hindu devotion, in a later lecture. Followers of Shiva are called Shaivites. Worshippers of Vishnu are called Vaishnavites. There are various Vaishnavite traditions in Hinduism which really focus on Vishnu. Sometimes Shiva and Parvati are combined into one figure called Ardhanarishvara. This statue is an example. You can see it's male on the left and female on the right. This kind of goes with the idea that a goddess is to be thought of as the power of or an aspect of the god, an idea which crops up fairly often in Hindu theology. And again, sometimes Vishnu and Shiva are combined into one deity. The idea, again, being that the two deities are really just two manifestations of the same deity. This sort of portrayal is called Harihara, or Shankara Narayana, in these combined names. Hari is another name of Vishnu, as is Narayana. You'll find there's Hindu literature where Vishnu is called by one or both of those names. And Hara and Shankara are names of Shiva. You can see here Vishnu on the left and Shiva on the right. Also on the left is Vishnu's divine vehicle, this sort of mythical creature that carries him and sometimes his wife around. Vishnu's is a kind of eagle or eagle person, and Shiva's is the bull, Nandi, N-A-N-D-I. It's also possible that this sort of portrayal is an attempt to unify different sectarian Hindus. Some Puranic literature strongly asserts that one of these two is the highest god, the other gods being creations of it. This sort of portrayal might be an attempt to pacify warring parties, as it were. Say, well, no, they're both the highest god. They're both really just manifestations of the one god. Here we have portrayed Ram, or Rama, in the middle. He's recognizable by his bow and arrow. This is the star character of the Ramayana, thought by many to be an incarnation of Vishnu. But this story is so popular, sometimes people use the word Ram just to mean God, that is, the one highest God. He's pictured here with Lakshman, his loyal brother, who's also a heroic character in the story, and his loving and loyal wife, Sita. And bowing at his feet, the loyal Hanuman, king of the monkeys, another very popular character from the stories. Not so much one of the highest gods himself, although he is worshipped by some Hindus. A little bit more of a superhero type of character, a second-tier god. The god Krishna is also very popular. He's a main focus of the Mahabharata, and most of the Bhagavad Gita is his talking with Arjuna, his disciple here. There are several different genres, several different types of stories relating to Krishna. In the Gita, he is presented as an incarnation of Vishnu. So here he is in the climactic scene of the Gita, where Arjuna has asked him to show his divine form. Up to this point in this story, Krishna just appears as another soldier, as the chariot driver, partnering together with Arjuna. Here he's manifesting his form, and that's Vishnu in the middle, and then all the other gods, basically in the pantheon, are there. The idea is that there's one highest god. This one highest god is now incarnate in Krishna, and really all the other gods are just manifestations of this one highest god. So Arjuna falls down in worship here. Another set of stories has to do with Krishna. When he was young, he appears as a mischievous boy who likes to steal butter out of his mother's kitchen. Hindus find these stories very cute and endearing. Again, there's a different set of stories, some of them very erotic, indeed very sexual, in which Krishna as a young man kind of charms and seduces a bunch of cow-herding girls. And in particular, he has one lover named Radha. In some versions of these stories, she's his aunt, and both of them are married to other people. But Krishna and Radha are celebrated as lovers. They're also worshipped as either two deities or a dual manifestation of God. Some will say they worship Radha Krishna, combining the two. An example of Hinduism that focuses on the worship of Krishna is the modern movement popularly called the Hare Krishnas. It's a modern form of Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. The official name of the Hare Krishnas is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, abbreviated to ISKCON. Now, most Hindus on occasion worship some goddess or other, but a minority of Hindus primarily worship a goddess. This type of Hinduism is called Shaktism. This seemed to have developed later in Hinduism. It's not so prominent in the early CE tradition, early medieval traditions, but most streams of Hinduism have some goddess worship in them today. Some Shaktites would even say that all the gods and goddesses in the pantheon are really just manifestations of Mahadevi, of the great goddess. Also often just called mother, terms like Mata or Mataji or Ma or Amma, or just Devi for goddess. You see that perspective expressed in this recent devotional picture. So in the background we have the great goddess. In the foreground, sort of coming out of her heart, you have the Trimurti, that is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And the idea is that they are just manifestations of her. She's the ultimate. This Mahadevi idea seems to have arisen in the Middle Ages, specifically in some of the Puranas, perhaps dated between 400 and 700 CE. There is a tendency I have noticed to kind of collapse the various goddesses into really just one goddess, into just a mother figure. One example of that is this type of portrayal of Tridevi, that is, three forms of the goddess. So on the left you have Parvati, who's associated with Shiva. In the middle, Lakshmi, the wife of Vishnu. And on the right, Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, who is supposed to be the wife of Brahma. But the idea you get here is really all just one goddess. So to wrap up then, almost all Hindus at some time or other worship some goddess. Sometimes they only honor them as associated with one of the important gods, like Shiva or Vishnu. Sometimes they consider the goddess as a power of the god, or the energy of the god. On the other hand, a minority of Hindus consider that the ultimate being is a goddess, the great goddess, with all the other gods and goddesses manifestations of her. The two most popular particular goddesses in modern Hinduism are these two. Durga is a sort of warrior goddess and mother goddess. Her many arms represent her great strength. Notice that she's carrying a lot of different weapons as well. In some of the Puranas, she slays a lot of evil demons and other bad guys. She's usually pictured riding a tiger. That's her divine vehicle. And another popular goddess, particularly in eastern India, is the terrifying and bloodthirsty Kali. She is frightening, with her tongue hanging out, with severed heads around her waist and skulls around her neck. But she is loved as a perfectly loving mother. Her ferocious side is supposed to be just ferocity against evil. So she's not supposed to be any kind of devil or bad deity. She's supposed to be good. And in fact, many consider Kali and Durga to be the same goddess, just in a sort of cool and hot forms, or in a more and less ferocious forms. And both of them are sometimes considered to be consorts of Shiva, even though, as we mentioned before, his wife is standardly considered as Parvati. Students often ask me why so many of these deities, and specifically Vishnu, Shiva, and Krishna, are blue. One answer is it's just traditional. The only attempt at an explanation I've ever really seen is that blue is the color of the sky, and so it sort of represents infinity. It's also noticeable that in these recent devotional pictures, the male deities are kind of pretty. They're kind of androgynous. I mean, look at the big, beautiful eyes and the rosy, round cheeks. I'm not sure why that is, and you don't find that in all the historical presentations of these deities. Sometimes they can be quite masculine indeed. I would hazard a guess that they're portrayed in this way to make them seem more approachable, to make them seem a bit friendlier, perhaps a bit more compassionate and approachable. In our next segment, we'll ask, is this monotheism or polytheism or both?